Hello friends, I am Dr. Sandeep Prakash Joshi, Head of the Postgraduate University Department of English, Sant Gadke Baba Amravati University, Amravati. I welcome you all once again to the Virtual Center from Campus to College and Community channel, Virtual C4, where we have organized for you a web lecture series on COVID-19 pandemic and related aspects. Today we have our distinguished guest, Ms. Pooja Halyal. Ms. Pooja Halyal is an assistant professor of English at Department of Studies and Research in English, Rani Chennamma University at Dharwad. She, being educated at Dharwad, she is a gold medalist at both BA and MA and has served as Senate member at Karnataka University. Currently, she is settled at Belgavi. She is a teacher by choice and has teaching experience of 19 years that are laden with her research and academic pursuits. She has many publications to her credit and has had an enthusiastic involvement in many conferences and workshops. She is presently a member secretary of Women Empowerment Cell and is working as an assistant registrar IQAC at Rani Chennamma University. She has delivered many invited talks and has chaired many sessions in many academic gatherings. Her area of interest is gender studies and Indian English literature. The title of her talk today is COVID-19 and Indian Higher Education. I welcome Ms. Pooja Halyal for her talk.
Good evening, everybody. At the outset, let me place on record my thanks to Professor Sandeep Joshi, Head Department of English, Amravati University, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share my thoughts on the topic COVID-19 and Indian higher education system. Before I begin, let me briefly give you a structure of my thought, which will enable you to comprehend the train of my thoughts with much more clarity. In the first part, I will try to reflect upon the present crisis and how we in the higher education sector perceive it. Then I will try giving a glimpse into the varied perspectives of looking at the tectonic shift to online education that is gaining impetus right now, where I will be quoting a few of the educationists that I heard in a few webinars very recently. Then I will present the reality of the ongoing confusions and uncertainties of the different stakeholders of higher education. My focus here would be on the expectations of the students and currently how are they being addressed. Then the next part would be on the pros and cons of online learning and how it's being conducted in the current circumstances. These reflections would be followed by a few suggestions of what needs to be done to make this online mode work for us in higher education system of today. So with this structure, I think I can go ahead with my points. And here I begin. The bolt from the blue, COVID-19, that has disrupted the whole system of human living and thinking on earth, garnered since thousands of years, is still on its strike. And the worst is predicted is yet to come. The full effects of this unprecedented event are still nowhere to be gauged, and therefore any prediction about its tolls on different aspects of our lives today would be far from being accurate at this point of time. However, our reasoning and analytical powers, which have always tried to find a method in the madness, have been active to make some sense of the chaos that has engulfed our entire globe, more widely today and more profoundly also than even during the 2 world wars that we have already faced. The proud gifts of our evolution and enlightenment are unleashed to put us back in control over the microscopically invisible contagion coronavirus, but the results are yet to arrive. It's with this awareness that any assessment and comprehension of the current situation would only be a subjective tweet that I am trying to figure out the current crisis in higher education in India. Being an active insider, very much a part of the ongoing uncertainty, I know that my talk today would be of a metaphorical man's attempt to comprehend the mammoth elephant. Yet, I would try to do some loud thinking that would probably help mitigate some of the fears of the major stakeholders of higher education. It was believed only till yesterday that one of the greatest human achievements has been our ability to pass on skills, knowledge, and learning to generations of people temporally and spatially in a systematic way, calling it the education system. It is the educational centers, right from the ancient Gurukulas, the medieval Nalanda, Takshashila, to the modern universities of the present times, that have always been the lampposts of learning. Societies have looked up to them for providing solutions to problems encountered by humanity time and again. But currently, this colossal system itself has come to a grinding halt. With their doors locked, these revered institutions have become incapable of providing a safe haven for discussions and deliberations. Probably, it's the first time that the acquisition of knowledge as being one of the supreme aims of life has taken a back seat, and the safeguarding of life has taken precedence over everything else. And all the stakeholders, including the teachers, the parents, students, are left directionless and almost paralyzed. However, even in such a hopeless situation, there are possibilities of revival and reordering if only a consensual alternative plan of action is achieved. Because humanity has always found out ways, even during potential threats from plague, cholera, typhoid, polio, and other epidemics and natural disasters that happened in the past. Today, with the technological advancements, virtual spaces for functioning can be tapped to fulfill the aims and objectives of higher education. The present exercise, that is the current one, of recording and dissemination of my thoughts itself is an example of the optimum technological use that is possible today. So on the one hand, progressive educationists are happy about educational institutions adopting online learning and infusion of virtual study culture. They are extremely positive about taking advantage of the pandemic's steering the sector forward with technological innovation and advancements. Among such enthusiasts, I quote here Dr. D.N.S. Kumar, the Vice Chancellor of Ansal University, Gurgaon, who is of the opinion that the switch to online education has been ensuring that students suffer no loss of studies and their progress is being tracked simultaneously with timely evaluation. He rightly shares that it is probably a first for India to experiment with the education system and make a paradigm shift to the virtual world, blending classrooms with online learning. He is in support of alchemizing education with the technology and forming a collaborative strategy to tread ahead while providing online lectures. Will also enable students to learn creatively. Boosting retention of the syllabus by using innovative technology, the universities are also engaging students to learn by choice and not just by their physical presence in a classroom. Furthermore, Dr. Kumar also opines that providing artificial intelligence enabled learning by universities as they are offer diverse courses in association with other collaborations is only making the country envision a new tomorrow based on educational reforms. He quotes the instance of medical students who can opt for interactive sessions to discuss specific case studies, engineering aspirants who could delve into the depths of environmental engineering and city planning along with the mentors, playing videos, and conducting online mood sessions for law enthusiasts and much more. So all this enthusiasm for online learning is one section of society where there is tremendous infrastructure and possible online platforms that are available at the click of their fingers. But a reality check would not paint such a rosy picture of most higher education institutions located along the breadth and length of our country. Most of them cannot boast of such high-tech facilities and possibilities. There are several hitches, and technology cannot provide a foolproof solution. So let me focus on those hitches and how best they can be remedied. According to a report of the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, which conducted a survey on higher education, has observed that there are 993 universities, 39,931 colleges, and 10,725 standalone institutions listed on their portal, which contribute to education. These institutions further reflect the student density of India, as the total enrollments in higher education every year are nearly 37.4 million, reflecting the expanding horizons of education. Coronavirus's worst hit is this bulk of student community who, with their several aspirations, had enrolled for the dream courses in the educational institutions accessible to them. And suddenly their goals today lie shattered as their study plans go awry with the closure of the campuses, their syllabi stranded, the sudden changes in educational delivery, and the inevitable switch over to the online mode. In fact, UNESCO has estimated that around 1.26 billion children, or 70% of children around the world, have had their education interrupted because of the pandemic. And a large number of these children are from what UNESCO calls the low-tech or no-tech phase, with India contributing 300 million of the 1.26 billion children. Given this backdrop, Professor Sahana Murthy, Professor Interdisciplinary Program in Education Technology, IIT Bombay, explained in one of the webinars, and I quote, she explains that the context behind the surge of online education in India as the idea of emergency remote teaching. She asserted that there is a difference between emergency remote teaching and effective online learning. She rightly explained that for online teaching, along with the requirement of tools such as online platforms, one needs access to well-trained teachers. So here, there lies the problem, because up to the current emergency, digital literacy and effective use of ICT in teaching learning was much talked about, was initiated although, but it was not a regular feature of our higher education. Though there are many platforms created to enable online education in India, supported by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, the National Council of Educational Research and Training, that is NCRT, and the Department of Technical Education, they are received as additional complementary courses. There are also initiatives like ePG Pathshala for e-content, Swayam which is for online courses for teachers, and NEET, NEET, for enhancing employability. Other online platforms aim to increase connectivity with institutions and accessibility to content. These are utilized for course materials and classes and running of online modules. They include the National Project on Technology Enhanced Learning, NPTEL, commonly known as NPTEL, National Knowledge Network, NKN, and National Academic Depository, NAD, among many others. But these portals are slowly catching up, and they were considered to be the supplementary resources and not the routine modes of teaching anywhere in India. But with sudden demands on all educational institutions to go online, teachers were suddenly expected to shift their pedagogy and methods of teaching. Though the younger faculty who are tech savvy with a little trial and error could switch over, not all of them found it easy. Comfortably efficient and effective with chalk and talk and face-to-face interactive sessions in the classrooms, the machine interface was not a smooth transition for most of the elders and the experienced teaching staff. And with no training sessions to cater to their techno deficiencies, again the teachers had to depend on short online webinars, short-term courses, and faculty development programs on ICT, online teaching, and digital tools organized by some institutes of the metropoles in this lockdown period, so that they could pick up some skills and somehow temporarily mitigate their teaching and evaluation responsibilities for the semester. So given these temporary plug-in kinds of remedies, the whole of academics has suffered, with neither the teachers nor the taught satisfied with the ad hoc solutions they have been able to achieve so far. Also, the digital education which was implemented in certain institutions prior to pandemic has been found wanting on several counts, which has led to abysmal completion rates. Most of them drop out of these digital online courses very soon. And the reasons have been non-existent rigor of assessment, non-establishment or non-transparency about improvement in knowledge, application, and competency in learners, non-contextual delivery, because context is a key factor in higher education. It influences the learning outcomes. Faculty in a classroom setup can size up and deliver the class, which doesn't happen in online mode. Also in online mode, you have one size fits it all kind of a delivery. So practitioners trying to just transpose classroom to the digital medium, which is causing many problems. Doing live classes may not bring in efficiency or effectiveness. Taking a concept all the way to application or higher order thinking is almost missing in online education. These and few of many other reasons make online education very poor in India. So, a complete digitized education is not at all advisable. Further, one cannot ignore that the students who enrolled for the regular offline courses had deliberately avoided the online and the distance mode and chosen to study in a regular university or a higher education institute for their own specific reasons. For instance, many students from small towns or rural areas purposely chose to study in cities, not just for the institute, but for the education that the place will expose them to. They would wish to make use of the hostel facilities, libraries, sports grounds, laboratories, Wi-Fi facilities, and other additional amenities which would not be available to them if they are studying from home. Staying in their homes would also induce them to share additional family duties, which would leave them with insufficient time for their own studies. Also, they would miss out on the connections and friendships that they would have made, which would keep them motivated to learn in a much better way. Again, the relationship between the teacher and the student itself is special. And I am sure that all teachers here would agree with me that the priceless psychosocial aspect of experiential learning, where a part of the teacher permanently resides in the student's persona and the communion established, cannot happen in a remote learning mode. For instance, as I speak even to you today, I believe there are many influences on me of my own teachers, very erudite professors who were perfectionists who trained us. And when they spoke to us, we tried to imitate them. And today, probably, I am an amalgam of so many teachers. So can this happen in an online delivery? Is a question. Other than these more generic problems that I have stated, more serious problems are also there. They are of those students who come from low income families, who would probably have availed educational loans, which now in the present situation may create undue stress because there's a time bound kind of a interest to be paid and other things, and with their studies going nowhere, probably this might worry them of how to repay it. With the job markets facing an economic recession and placement opportunities scarce, the students are facing a bleak future. These uncertainties are likely to increase the dropout rate and deplete the enrollment rate too, with students opting not to invest in education without any incentive of lucrative jobs to reimburse their investments. And probably parents who would have, saved a lot of money from other resources, curtailed their other expenses and invested in their children's studies also are bound to get disappointed. And many of them would not find investments in their children's education as uh, you know, um, reimburse you than it was earlier. They may not find it lucrative at all, and they may ask the children to find some other means of earning their livelihood than educate themselves, and then later on try to find jobs and lose a lot of time in that. So these conditions will have a dramatic effect on the higher education institutes because even the finances will be affected, forcing many of the smaller private ones to shut down completely. And once such smaller institutes get shut down, what would happen to the students who are already with them? Where would they go? Those with capacities to mobilize resources will function. But what will be their modus operandi? Will they run them online? Can the subjects like nursing, medicine, engineering, and many practical oriented courses be taught online? What about the teacher training? How will the evaluations be done? What about the quality checks? Above all, what about physical education and sports training? The questions are probably unlimited. These problems apart, what about students' preparedness to take these online sessions? So with this, I enter into altogether a new scenario. Even if the institutions are ready to give online education, they gear up, they update their infrastructures, and they're all set to educate the children, the students enrolled with them. What about the kind of arrangement required for the students to take up these online courses? How many students and how much preparation has happened? So the students' preparedness to take these online sessions, even if the institutions are geared up to deliver, is a real problem. Can we expect all students to afford laptops with internet connectivity? Do we have internet in rural places? This lockdown made us aware how distant is the dream of digital India, with ample number of instances of students and teachers sitting on treetops and climbing poles to be able to connect to the others and function in the virtual world. And this is what I'm quoting from my own real example, because one of my own students who is now teaching in some other college had posted a pic of his wherein he was sitting on a top of a tree, trying to connect to his to his students and teach them. So if this is a case in a nearby town near my own city, what about the others? What about the rest of India? Additionally, the paucity of electricity and other basic resources would make learning for many students unwieldy. The necessary bandwidth for the uninterrupted connectivity, internet connectivity, is not available in most parts of India. This will necessarily, yet again, I'm sorry to say this, it will widen the gulf of the already existing digital divide. So the very goals of giving an equitable education would remain unfulfilled. Yet another problem encountered is the implementation of online methods and provision of safe and hygienic ambience in many government-run institutes, which cater to the educational needs of the majority of Indian students. The private-run institutes can immediately take policy decisions and implement the changes very speedily. But the bureaucracy and the long chain of official procedures would take a long time for changes to be brought in government-run institutions. Hence, even at the institutional levels too, the scenario is not very encouraging. Unless at the central government level, the academicians and heads of institutions pool their energies and come out with strong decisions and strict rules for implementation and foolproof measures to be followed all over India uniformly, not much can be done. A lot of funding needs to be diverted for a massive overhaul of the ailing system, else it will become defunct and a relic of the past. And with such a collapse, the society as a whole will traverse in the reverse and bring to naught all the progress achieved till date. So with this scenario in front of us, what's the way ahead? So with this, I go to the next part of my presentation. The suggestions I would now talk to you all is about are probably mere speculations based on random discussions that I had with a number of people, my own reading and observation of the tectonic shift in the higher education sector across the globe. So these suggestions of mine are not to be received as miraculous remedies which would rejuvenate the education system. Now, I'm not giving any remedies here, but the education institutes need to realize the importance of these probable solutions that I'm trying to give here. The first one is that the education institutes need to realize that online education is conducted in two ways. The first is through the use of recorded classes, which when opened out to public are referred to as massive open online course. Probably the one that we are doing here, recording and then posting, uploading them on YouTube, is one such way of doing it. The second one is via live online classes conducted as webinars or Zoom sessions. Universities require high-speed internet and education delivery platforms or learning management systems, LMS, besides stable IT infrastructure and faculty members who are comfortable teaching online. Students also need high-speed internet and computers, smartphones to attend these sessions or watch pre-recorded classes. The students cannot be expected to survive on 1 GB or 2 GB daily data plans on their mobiles, as not everyone has Wi-Fi at home and they have to manage their entire coursework on that. So something needs to be done to address these problems. Second point, online learning is not a library of video lectures and e-books and converts of class notes into PDFs. So this is not online learning, but we have been doing this, with our students in the name of going online. Instead, creating high quality digitized learning content, which must be contextualized and bite-sized to make learning interesting and engaging. And doing this takes a rare skill set which few organizations in the world can boast of. Universities need to collaborate with such organizations for their digital pivots to be successful. So a lot needs to be done in this field. A lot of preparation, a lot of digital material in the right way needs to be prepared by the universities. Thirdly, subject matter covered in classroom is to be delivered online, but with technology as an intermediary. Blind replication of the same is a bad idea. It requires a great deal of understanding and application of learning science and digital pedagogy. Every teaching faculty needs to be enabled with this knowledge, or else collaboration with experts, I believe, is the way forward. So the massive teacher training, acquainting them with what it is to really go digital, what it is to really, what it really takes to build a digital material is a must for teachers, and a massive training of teaching faculty is a necessity of the day. Classrooms, the next point, classrooms have typically diverse learner groups. In classical pedagogy, the best of teachers and subject matter experts derive a content context cluster as a mean of the class collective ability and prior knowledge. Then the teaching learning transaction is crafted according to that constructed mean. This will not and cannot work in online learning. Institutions need to spend as much time on the context for the diverse learning profiles as on the content and weave it into a program design. The institutions have to go ahead designing a whole program with a content that can be contextualized according to the needs of their own students. The institutions cannot buy the already available content and dump it on the students, because without the context, probably any kind of content will not make any meaning to the students. The students will not be able to relate to the knowledge that is given to them, and hence application would be unthinkable. So this content context needs to be worked out when digital material is being prepared. The fifth point is new technologies, including the emerging sciences of artificial intelligence and deep learning models, can help create customized learning plans and methods. So you cannot have one plan fitting everybody here. We need to customize the learning plans and methods depending on the kind of students, their abilities, their interests. And only then online learning can somewhere match up to the offline classroom classes. Higher education institution must embrace these quickly to overcome the ills of current digital higher education. The sixth point is online learning is not about one pedagogical model. You cannot have one model common for everybody. No. It is but an aggregation of various models. And it is indeed a specialized learning science that combines learning psychology, behavioral analytics, content delivery, and assessments to gauge and measure the learner's journey and progress. So, working with specialists and hand stitching a delivery mechanism is a key. So, the institutes will have to go in for this huge mechanism, consulting many psychology people, psychologists, I mean, many behavioral analytics, many content developers. Um, they all need to sit together and formulate a content, again, modify it according to the needs of the learners, customize it according to the institution's necessity, the students' challenges, and so on and so forth. The next point is the seventh point. It is necessary to put learning subjects and not technology in the forefront. So instead of concentrating on what is being taught, what the way it is being taught is becoming the concentration. The way you're using technology for the content is taking precedence over what is being taught. So very many models being created today seek to use technology and tools as a panacea and equate online delivery with online learning. So online delivery is not online learning. Online delivery is teacher centric, and online learning is learner centric. Learning is about gradually inducing changes in learners' actions and behavior. The learning process in incremental steps induces change in thinking and mental models of the learner through deep understanding and conceptual strengthening. After each learning episode, the learner will be able to apply the acquired knowledge in practical situations in life, profession, or workplace. Each teaching faculty needs to be massively retrained and oriented for online teaching learning mode. While they could be content experts or great classroom teachers, they need to place equal importance to learning subjects in a digital media. The eighth point, of course, even in the post-COVID-19 era, offline or conventional education models will not become obsolete. They will survive. As teachers acquire new skills, blended learning in the form of a combination of classroom and online modes will probably be the norm. It would be ideal if institutions and teachers will blend the two judiciously according to the context and the content. Overall, if I could say it's a sum, the newly realized need for establishing mature online education models can be successfully met by making some alterations. And what these alterations are, I'll try to talk about a few. The faculty have to let go of their existing practices of transposing classroom to online medium without applying the science of digital learning. So repeatedly, I'm asking the universities to take up this teacher training to make them adapt properly to the digital mode. The onus cannot be put on the teachers of trial and error because digital teaching and learning is entirely a new way of going about with different methods, modes, and pedagogy. And unless teachers are made aware of this and they are trained in this, I think no online teaching can become successful. Universities have to gear up for meeting these new challenges. They need to create and upgrade required infrastructure, invest in creating standardized online educational platforms, and not using apps, Zoom sessions, or Google Hangouts only. Because we also heard that these sessions are not at all safe. The material, the matter, or the information from the laptops and the mobiles can actually be hacked by unknown people. Therefore, these are not very safe. So, at the institutional level, if these platforms are created, um, then I think it can become a proper medium of sharing knowledge. So, the higher education institutions need to take up massive training of the teaching faculty in the first place and redesign higher education for the newest online education world. Also, research undertakings must be channelized, which can be carried out in a more flexible way, providing autonomy to the researchers to choose their modes without affecting the serious intent of the work that they have taken up. So, teaching, learning, and research, all three need to be addressed properly, and the institutions need to come forward dynamically, pool their resources with other people who are digitally more active, more ahead of them, draw inferences from their own temporary, ongoing practice sessions, and then evolve something that is concrete, something that is more scientific, so that this online mode of education can continue till the pandemic is over. And when the pandemic will get over is still a question mark. And how long it may take is another big question that probably any of us can answer at this point of time. Thus, we can only reiterate that higher education is seldom about exams, classes, or grades. Rather, it's about interactions, it's about broadening of ideas, free flowing open discussions, debates, and mentoring of each student individually. It is to be geared up for providing an experience that prepares a student to become a functioning member of the workforce with proper team spirit, with requisite knowledge and skills and life experiences. But unfortunately, a lot gets lost in translation on the online platform. So, unless the policymakers, the government, and those at the helm of affairs do not take initiatives to rework strategies to overcome the present crisis and ease the transition of higher education in India and to mold it into a robust system capable of delivering equitable, accessible, meaningful, and useful knowledge and skills to all its stakeholders, there's going to be confusion and chaos. The students who are in panic about the examinations, results, grades, internships, placements, and careers need to be given assurance soon. And all the higher educations in India need to talk about these with the students, have live sessions or recorded sessions where the students can be talked to, uh, some assurance can be given to them about the next um, method or mode of the universities uh, that they will carry out. The confidence of the students, of the parents need to be built up so that um, nothing much harm can happen. So with this, I think I'll end my talk with the hope that the lesson taught to us by the COVID pandemic about how shallow our pride is, about our so called great achievements, be it the nuclear weapons or our control over land, water, space, planets, our superiority over other species. These achievements have come to a naught. In fact, our ego of being supreme species on earth has now burst like an air bubble because none of our accomplishments could help us in handling a minuscule coronavirus. None of our nuclear weapons are strong enough to destroy one small coronavirus. So let's move ahead with humility and hope, with a pledge not to disturb the rejuvenated earth once again. And let's evolve eco friendly solutions in the ensuing days. I once again thank the Department of English, Amaravati University, for giving me this opportunity to share a few of my random thoughts with all of you on COVID-19 and Indian higher education system. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. That was a wonderful lecture by you. On behalf of the virtual C4 channel, I thank Ms. Pooja Halyal for accepting our invitation and delivering such wonderful and scholarly lecture. I also thank our technical team expert, Mr. Gaurav Ingre, and all members of the virtual C4 committee for their immense help and cooperation. Last but not the least, I extend my immense gratitude to all the audience for their keen participation and involvement. Thank you and have a nice day.